Our first speaker today attended one of the rallies yesterday, and today he's going to speak about work worth doing for a democracy worth saving. Please welcome back Rob Carli.
Behind the microphone.
Bring it down if you need to. Closer.
Is this good?
Closer.
Closer? Are we good? Okay, excellent. So my name is Rob Carli. I grew up here in Southbury. I moved over to Cheshire. I've been kind of intermittently involved in Justice Southbury for the past few months. So I've been involved in a variety of different elections for the Democratic Party for the past little under 10 years. And this past election, last November, it kind of hurt. I've been involved in a number of other campaigns. I've volunteered for Democrats who've lost to Republicans. I've volunteered for Democrats who lost to other Democrats in primaries. You know, you win some, you lose some, but this one I think was different, not because, we lost to a Republican or we lost, the Senate. It was different because who that guy was, what his belief system or lack thereof. It was his clear-eyed intent to abuse power. It was the fact that there were so many of our fellow Americans who were willing to have directed and concerted cruelty on their fellow Americans, and they thought that was acceptable because they might personally financially gain from it. And the fact that there were still, even after he threatened to kill his former vice president, there were still elected officials lining up for the chance to be his next vice president and in his cabinet. And all that was just really just kind of depressing and dejecting. And so one of the first things I did after he was elected is I just started calling people. I volunteered in a lot of other places and a lot of other elections, so I just knew a lot of people. So I just started calling just to check in on people, just to see how they were doing and how they were holding up. Wasn't a whole lot you can do on November 7th, during the transition. So I figured that was something that I could do. And I felt horrible, but because I felt horrible, that meant there was probably other people feeling horrible at that time. And so the first thing I could do is just check in just to see how they were doing. And he was inaugurated, and he assumed power. And since he's been elected into office, we've seen a concerted effort to consolidate power against universities, against leaders of industry, against members of the media. We've seen him try to consolidate power against members of the legislative branch, law enforcement, and we've seen him in many cases largely succeeding. We've seen him make a concerted effort to establish myth and superstition over fact and science when it comes to public health. We've seen him try and skirt the rule of law, target vulnerable communities like our transgender, gay community, as well as our immigrant community. And I think it's easy to slip into a sense of pessimism and cynicism of it all, to say that, it's over, or, this country is so screwed up that it's irredeemable, that it's not worth saving. And I don't quite agree with that. Because throughout all of American history, we've never been a perfect nation. We've always been a nation trying to form a more perfect union. In the 1940s, we had the American Fascist Party saying that we should stay out of Europe and that we should abandon our allies in Europe under the guise of America first, that we don't have to help them. And there were Americans who thought that was nonsense, crossed an ocean, stormed the beaches in Normandy, and liberated a continent from fascism. We've been a nation that thought that black people were somehow second-class citizens, and we established an elaborate legal code of Jim Crow to enforce, to make sure that they were second-class citizens. And we've had Americans who marched on Washington, who had a dream, and who signed the civil rights bills of the 1960s. And we've had an America that voted in a man to the office of the presidency who abused the office of the presidency and said that when he does it because he's the president, it's okay. And we've had people who said, President Nixon, that's not okay, and that no man is above the law, not even the president. And if they can go meet the challenges of their time, then so can we. And luckily for us, that I do believe that Donald Trump is on the way out. I think if you look at it from the perspective of just the election, he won only with a 1.5% popular vote margin of victory. A lot of the reason why people voted for him was because of an economic discontent. People were frustrated with the rise in the cost of living, and people very often tend to vote out the party in power than necessarily vote for the opposition party. And as we're already seeing, his approval rating has been steadily declining. We've already seen that, in particular, his approval rating of the economy and how he's handling the economy has been declining. Is now has been so low that it's never been as low, even during the first term in office. And by and large, again, that was the reason why he got the job. The majorities in particularly the House are slim, which will constrain his ability to do things. Anywhere between 40 to 50% of the executive orders he's already issued have either been overturned by the court or have been rescinded by the president himself. And so I do believe we do have the winds at our backs. I do believe that we are moving forward as a nation. But what I also want to make sure that we don't fall into is an equally complicit sense of false optimism. This idea that, well, he's already crumbling, he's already screwing things up, we'll just let him fail, and then as long as we don't do anything, as long as we play dead, we don't actually have to do anything. And I think that's incredibly problematic. And I think that's incredibly problematic for two big reasons. The first reason is that although his margin of victory was small, I do think it was fairly massive by its implications. A lot of the people who voted for him were people like Latino voters, were people who were like black men, young voters, people who were poor and struggling in this war. The people that the Democratic Party claims to support and claims to be the champions of voted for the other side. We need to make sure that we're offering a vision and a future that they will believe in, and not just hoping that the other guy screws up hard enough that they're going to come crawling back to us, you know? And secondly, you can't call the guy the next American Hitler and say that he is an existential threat to American democracy, and then as soon as he gets elected say, you know what, I can't wait to work on common causes with him and help Hitler build the Autobahn. Like, that's not really why. There's a certain hypocrisy, you know, to having a guy who you say is such an existential threat and then folding as soon as he wins. You know, there is a certain hypocrisy that we will, and blowback that we will deserve and we will have earned if we do not work against him. You know, the Atlantic came out with an article that I think a lot of us have probably read that claimed that Hitler was able to successfully dismantle democracy in around 53 days or so, if I recall correctly. The idea that we need to play dead in hopes that 2 years later, during the midterms, we could vote him out and then we'll get the House of Representatives. That's problematic. We need to do stuff today, and we need to do stuff right now, and we do not need to wait around. And luckily for us, we don't have to wait around. There's tons of different things we could be doing, and this is what I really want people to paying attention to. The obvious thing is calling your representatives, both to tell them that they're doing a good job when they do stand up, you know. They're always getting hate mail. They don't always get we appreciate you and thank you mail. So call them to let them know when they're doing something well, whether or not they're a Republican or a Democrat, and call them to let them know that you're disappointed in them or you're angry with them, regardless of whether or not they're a Democrat or a Republican. You know, we also have to keep in mind, we still have control of the state of Connecticut. There's a Democratic governor, and there's Democratic control of both chambers of the legislature. There are things we can do from the state of the Connecticut perspective. Governor Lamont has already committed that we still have several years of surplus that we will be using to patch some of the holes caused by the withdrawal of federal funding. William Tong has been suing the federal government for a lot of their illegal actions, including most recently, which he sued to recover over $150 million worth of health care spending that was allocated to be spent in the state of Connecticut that is now being withdrawn, that was illegally withdrawn, and he's working to get back. And we have bills in the state legislature right now, particularly the one I've been following is Senate Bill number 7. This is an omnibus bill related to healthcare, and it will keep fluoride in our water, maintain the safety of our water. It will maintain funding for our emergency healthcare services, as well as a lot of other things. There are several other bills in the state legislature right now that people should be following, and people should be calling their state legislatures in order to try to get them to support related to, there are a lot of shield laws in there related to making sure that this is a safe harbor for women who are seeking abortion, people who are transitioning and need puberty blockers or other support with transitioning to another gender. There's a lot we can do both from the state government, but then there's also a lot we could do electorally. We have special election. There's a special election happening in Shelton on April 22nd, which is currently a Republican-held seat that has a Democrat running to flip that seat. You could volunteer for that special election. We have municipals coming up. Volunteer for your municipals or just run for office. You know, book bans are banned at the local level. You know, zoning laws are made at the local level. You don't have to wait for the midterm election to be involved in your town government or how your town is run. You know, and if you're ever concerned, it's like, Rob, I don't know anything about running for office. I don't know anything about government or politics or campaigns. There are plenty of different organizations you could be part of. The National Democratic Training Committee is an online organization. They do training videos on everything you would ever want to do related to running for office. Emily's List and eMerge are focused on women and getting women more involved in running for office. Your local Democratic Town Committee are happy to have you and are happy to help you run for office and get you involved in their campaigns. There are so many different organizations that are willing to help you get more politically involved. And even if you don't want to be involved in electoral politics, organizations like the ACLU have been working overtime here. I know Rick had mentioned people being disappeared. They are currently representing Mahmoud Khalil, who was disappeared a little while ago from his pregnant wife, and who the federal government, to my knowledge, still will not say where exactly they're holding him. They are also working overtime to protect people's right to protest and people's right to the First Amendment that is under sustained attack by by our federal government. There are plenty of other organizations. There's Public Citizen, Ralph Nader's group, that has been suing the Trump administration and sued them when they wanted to take down public health information related to vaccines and public health. They were the ones who sued him to help get that back up. Tons of other great organizations. The Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, IRIS, is another great organization that has that needs both your support as well as any of your donations. They recently had to close not one but both of their in-office facilities in the state of Connecticut and had moved to a 100% online model, with the idea that they're expecting a lot and significant federal cuts in the near future. They could use your support, and they don't have time to wait for the midterm elections for the Democrats to come over the hilltop to come save them. There are tons of organizations related to legal funds to support scientists who are having their funding cut because they believe in climate change and rational thought and the truth. There are tons of organizations related to being involved to protecting people's civil rights. You know, you could protest, we could boycott. There are so many things we can do that I'm not trying to poo-poo voting in elections. Obviously, I've worked as campaign manager for things. I've worked as treasurer for things. I've worked as volunteer coordinator for things. Obviously, I've been involved in a lot of electoral politics over the past couple of years of my life. But there comes a time in which you have to say that that's just one tool in our toolbox. And if voting for Democrats worked, we wouldn't be in the second Trump term. All right, like there's more to this world than just electoral politics. Electoral politics are important, but we do not have to wait for the next election in order to do something today. And I just want to leave you with just the last thought that sometimes work is boring, sometimes work is frustrating, sometimes work doesn't have the same results that you would hope to have immediate. But that doesn't mean it's not important. Right is still right and wrong is still wrong, even when everyone else seems to be doing wrong and no one else seems to be doing right. As long as the work is worth doing, then the work is worth doing. And I believe that this is democracy worth saving. And that's what I wanted to leave you guys with. Yeah!